I paid a random stranger to write me their best version of a short mystery novel. You guys want to hear it? Okay, so I went on Fiverr, of course, and looked at random writers, trying to find the best looking one. And no, I didn't choose this one because it's a hot girl. I chose it because it was cheap. Anyways, I talked to her and gave her only a couple of details about the story and theme and character and all that. Number 1, it's a noir about an old serial killer from 30 years ago on the rise again. 2, the main character is a PI, a private investigator. That's basically it. She gave me her best version of it. It's about 1,500 words, so brace yourselves. We about to get in on a read-off with the addition of a super sexy voice on my part to make it more exciting. So, shall we? Harry Swift paced up and down his office. 3 murders in one night, and he hadn't been there. 3 innocent women were getting murdered while he was asleep in bed. He had woken up to 7 missed calls from the police station, but had somehow slept through them. He had always fancied himself a light sleeper, but that had proved untrue recently. He stared at the board in front of him. Strings of red, green, and blue were scattered over the cardboard, making a rather confusing arrangement of colors. His eyes flickered from one side of the board to the other, taking in the pictures of the dead women. Their faces were pallid and veiny. Their once bright eyes were bloodshot and open wide, their mouths still open from the shock of how he had murdered them. He had killed them all in the same way, a knife through the stomach, but he never left it there, signaling that he was going to kill again. This wasn't Harry's first serial killer, nor would it be his last. He had been training his whole life for this moment. When he caught his first killer, he was only 18. They called him a modern-day Sherlock Holmes. He would be damned if he let someone so evil escape him. He would make sure they got what they deserved in the end. It didn't matter how long it took him. The door behind him opened and he spun rather dramatically towards it, locking eyes with his assistant. Her blonde hair looked beautiful in the morning light, but to be fair, it looked ethereal in whatever light she was best in. Stop! Harry needed to snap out of it. He needed to get his head back in the game and solve the murders. "Good morning, sir," she said with that brilliant smile. She could light up a room just by standing in it. "Good morning, Aubrey," he said back, in his deep, monotone voice. He sounded devoid of emotion at all times. He didn't mind it, though. People stayed out of his way, just as he stayed out of Three's, and that's the way he liked it. They didn't talk much beyond that point, just some awkward conversation about how each other's days had been. Neither of them really cared. It was just the basics of having a conversation with another adult. That didn't mean he didn't loathe it. Harry had never been one for long, intimate conversations. The day flew by. After hours upon hours of searching the database, Harry concluded that he would have to get back out on the field. He recognized some of the patterns the killer was following, certain timings, certain areas. There was a killer about 30 years ago that nobody had managed to catch, not even Harry. He couldn't find any evidence that linked back to a person. That was a dark period of time for Harry. He was passing out a lot. Trying to get over an addiction was troubling. He could hardly stay awake long enough to fully investigate. He had it under control now, though. Every pill he took was carefully rationed. He wouldn't let himself let another killer go free because he was out of control. As he stumbled home, his feet aching from a day full of pacing, he saw his kitchen light was turned on. She was still up then. He had been married for just over 20 years, but recently their marriage had been deteriorating. They barely talked, and when they did, it seemed forced and awkward. They both knew it was only a matter of time before one of them filed for divorce. It was a waiting game of who would make the first move. As soon as he opened the door, the light turned off, and he heard his wife scramble up the stairs. She was no longer just being quiet, she was actively avoiding him. He sighed deeply and took those pills that offered him some type of comfort, even if it wasn't practical. It was the only thing he could do to drift off into a slumber. When he awoke, he was on the couch. He must have collapsed before he got to bed. His phone was ringing, loudly blaring next to him. It was still dark outside. It was 4 a.m. What the hell? Hello? He picked up the phone slowly and answered in a voice that was far too raspy to sound remotely like him. Sir, you have got to get down here. There's been another murder. He wiped his eyes, trying to adjust the harsh light of his phone. This should be going through Audrey, not me. I'll be down in an hour at most. Next time, please inform Audrey before you call me. He inhaled deeply and went to stand. The person on the other line took a shaky breath. Sir, Audrey was murdered. That's why we called you. His heart stopped in his chest. He could have sworn the blood stopped pumping through his veins completely. He let out a quiet mumble and pulled on his shoes, his heart aching as he did. The walk to the police station was dreadful. He had to find who had done this, who was killing not only strangers but people he was close to. He took a deep breath before walking into his office. That's when the hunt really started. He got together all of the locations he could find and started traveling to them. He went from the slums to the richest areas, questioning whoever he could find, whoever matched the personality types he was looking for. They were antisocial, definitely, clearly struggling. Why would they wait 30 years to resurface? It didn't make any sense. He would find the killer if it were the last thing he did. He spent over 14 hours on his feet, moving from house to house, park to park, street to street, trying to come up with a solution for something that seemed beyond impossible. Finally, he got a lead. There was a man who had lived in the neighborhood when the murders first started. When they finished, he left, but now he was back, and so were the deaths. This could be it. He knocked on the man's door, tried to smile as wide as possible as he strolled into his house. He didn't want to give this man any idea of him being a threat. Not if this man was behind the killings. He would be prepared to answer to detectives and police officers, maybe even prepared to kill them if he had to. He placed his hands on his gun just to feel the comfort of it being there. As he walked through to the lounge, his phone rang again, making him jump slightly. "Detective Swift?" he said sternly in a way of greeting. "Dad?" Harry's eyes fluttered slightly. He hadn't heard from his daughter in several years. Mia had cut off all contact with him after the pills. "It's Mom. Dad, she's not breathing." She was weeping down the phone. He hung up and raced from the door. His aching feet pounded against the pavement as he ran. Every inch of his body urged him to run faster, to move quicker. He burst in the door. There she was, on the floor, blood covering her torso, a knife stuck in her stomach. "Please, no." "They said it happened last night." His daughter's eyes looked lifeless. "Dead. It had happened while he was in the house, while he was sleeping. The killer had struck." "How is he today?" the nurse asked. "Not good," said the doctor. "He's been talking to the wall for hours now." "It's such a sad story," whispered the nurse, sitting in front of the one-way glass. "Pills are killers. He killed his wife, his assistant, and strangers because of those pills," the doctor whispered. "No," Mia muttered. "He killed them because he's not right in the head." "Miss Swift," said the nurse. "We didn't see you there." Mia looked her up and down slowly and opened the door where her father was staring at the wall vacantly. "Dad?" she said quietly. "Honey." He jumped up. The hospital gown went all the way down to his knees. "Me and your mother are going out after work today." He pointed to an empty space. "Doesn't she look lovely?" Mia wiped a tear from her cheek. "Yeah, Dad, she looks great. I'm working on a new case. Oh, really? She sat on the bed. She was all he had left. A serial killer killed 3 people last night. I will find him. I'm sure you will, Dad. Mia wiped another tear from her cheek and looked at the picture of her mother on her phone. The end. So, what did you guys think of the story? I paid $20 for this shit, and honestly, if I can say, it's pretty well worth the money. It's nothing too great, you know. There were a few cliche moments. The twist is pretty okay, you know, a little Jekyll and Hyde in there, but there wasn't much explanation as, you know, to why he committed the murders. All we know is pills. That's it. But overall, pretty okay story, you know. The characters could have used a little bit more exposition. All in all, I give it a 7 out of 10. It had its flaws, but it was an overall good story, you know. And since this has been done in literally 3 days, it's pretty good. So, let me know, you guys, if you like this kind of video. I kind of wanted to try this thing out. And don't forget to like the damn video, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out. Until next time.